Navid Razi for MMAweighin.com here with award-winning journalist MMAJunkie.com's John Morgan for UFC 136. We're at the Fan Expo in Houston. There's a saying, John Morgan, in Texas, and they do things big, and the UFC pulled no punches in putting this whole weekend together.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a huge weekend. I think one of the best cards of the year. 2 title fights at one time, and then another great fight between Chael Sonnen and Brian Stann on the main card, in addition to this 2-day Fan Expo. Just an outstanding event here this weekend in Houston.
As you mentioned, the UFC Fan Expo going on today and tomorrow. And tomorrow, let's talk about that UFC 136 card, starting out with Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard, a trilogy. And the last time these two guys squared off, a crazy fight. It looked like Gray Maynard had the fight won in the first round, knocked Frankie Edgar over several times. Some argued it was even a 10-7 round. Now we're going to get to see a rematch. How do you see this thing going down?
Well, first of all, how exciting is it? You know, back in January when this fight was going to happen, the MMA world didn't even care about it. It was the fight where 2 guys were just going to lay on top of each other for 5 rounds. Now everybody was pumped up. The weigh-ins today, the crowd was absolutely electric. I like the challenger in this one. I like Gray Maynard. I like the way he looked today at the weigh-ins. Didn't look like he had a rough weight cut. That's a big man losing a lot of weight, but he looked like he lost it really well. He stood over Frankie Edgar, kind of stood him right in the face and said, yeah, they call me the bully for a reason, buddy.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Gray Maynard in this fight as well. You have to look at, and we were talking about this last night when we did the show on MMAweighin.com, but Frankie Edgar's the favorite in this fight for some reason. And really, if you think about it, he lost the first fight, toss-up in the second fight, but I mean, it was very close. He got destroyed for the first 2 rounds of that fight. I'm not sure how he's a favorite in this, but I don't see Gray Maynard losing this fight. He had an adrenaline dump. He went out there and tried to finish Frankie Edgar. We've seen it happen with Shane Carwin and some other guys. I don't see him making that same mistake again, and I'm not sure how Frankie Edgar is a favorite.
I think he's a bit of a fan favorite. I mean, he's a bit of a personality, too. Gray Maynard is not the most outspoken guy, not the most entertaining guy on camera, although I think in the gym at Extreme Couture in Las Vegas, he's a super funny guy and a lot of personality. I just don't think it always comes through to the fans, to be honest with you. So I think there's a little bit of emotion in that wagering line and the fact that Frankie Edgar is the favorite. Plus, he did have that miraculous comeback, and I think people are really holding on to what happened over the last 4 rounds. But let's not forget about what happened in round 1. That was utter domination, coupled with the fact that Gray Maynard beat him the first time they met. So if 2 guys are going to meet for the 3rd time and 1 guy hasn't lost yet, give me that guy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's get into the second fight on the card, and that's Jose Aldo versus Kenny Florian. This could arguably be fight of the night. Jose Aldo has looked spectacular in his last couple of fights. He looked a little rusty in his last fight against Mark Hominick, but he was coming off almost a year-long layoff from back surgery. I don't think Kenny Florian has much of a chance in this fight. Jose Aldo is so explosive with those kicks, and his striking's on a whole other level, and I don't think Kenny Florian can take this fight to the ground where he would have the advantage.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. I mean, you never want to count Kenny Florian out of any fight. The guy's a super talented fighter, and he's got a ton of heart, and he's fought in 4 different weight classes now. It's just insane what he's accomplished, the number of people that he's fought in his career, the quality of people that he's fought in his career. So I don't want to count him out, but I have trouble pointing to one particular thing that Kenny Florian could do that could win him this fight. To me, everything has to go exactly right in order for Kenny Florian to win, because I think Jose Aldo has a little bit more technical stand-up, a little bit more power, a little bit more speed, a little bit better on the ground. There's just not one area where Kenny Florian is super dominant in. So anything can happen in a fight. We see it. You strap on these 4-ounce gloves and anybody can win on any given night, but things are going to have to go very well for Kenny Florian to take this.
Let's get into Chael Mighty Mouse Sonnen against Brian, the All-American Stann. This is a crazy fight, really. A lot of people have been dodging Brian Stann, and not really because they're scared of losing a fight, but it's almost worse to beat this guy than it is to win because he's such a fan favorite. Everybody looks at him as a hero. How do you see this fight going down? Chael Sonnen's been off for more than a year. A laundry list of controversy going back from the elevated testosterone level in the Anderson Silva fight, real estate issues, legal troubles, getting suspended. Now he's coming back after a year-long layoff. How do you see this thing matching up with Brian Stann?
You know, in MMA, there's a saying that styles make fights, and we hear that a lot, and it's very, very true in this fight. You've got 2 guys with extremely differing styles. Chael Sonnen is going to try to get in, take this fight to the ground, and out-wrestle Brian Stann, and he certainly can. He's definitely got the wrestling ability. Meanwhile, Brian Stann is going to try to keep this fight on the feet, use his dangerous strikes to score a TKO victory. I'm going to go with Brian Stann in this. He's a pretty heavy underdog in this fight, and I think for good reason. I think Chael Sonnen could very easily just take the fight to the floor, lay on top of him, and grind out a decision for 3 rounds. But the things that you talked about, the time that he's had away, 14 months out of the sport, cage arrest is a very real thing. The fact that the last time he fought, he had elevated testosterone levels. So I've got to assume he's not doing whatever he was doing to be that person before. And I think, you know, it could possibly have a negative impact on him. So I'm going to go with the upset here, Brian Stann. Chael Sonnen could certainly win this fight, but I'm going to go with the underdog.
That's very good points you made as far as the HGH and how he's going to respond to that, not being on that stuff this time around. However, the one thing I will say, ring rust is a huge factor, especially when you look at a striker. With Chael Sonnen, his game is strictly ground and pound for the most part. I mean, his stand-up looked great against Anderson Silva. Nobody expected him to do what he did, but his wrestling is at a world class, and I'm not sure Brian Stan's going to be able to deal with that. Not only that, but ring rust isn't as big of an issue for wrestlers as it is for strikers. So I'm going to go on the other side and go with Chael Sonnen on that. But let's get into Melvin Guillard versus Joe Lauzon. This fight has fireworks written all over it. Melvin Guillard has looked spectacular in his last few fights, and he's arguably in line for a title shot. How do you see this thing breaking down?
Well, we talk about the weigh-ins we saw this afternoon. How relaxed was Melvin Guillard? I mean, he's just out there having fun. He's in Houston, his adopted hometown. He's on this amazing run right now. Joe Lauzon presents some real problems for him. Melvin Guillard, when he loses, it tends to be via submission, and that's the way Joe Lauzon is going to try to attack him. But I'm just not sure how Joe gets this fight to the ground. Melvin's wrestling, I think, is severely underrated, and he's very focused right now. He's been fighting grapplers. And you think about Shane Roller. That's a guy that was an All-American in college and a legitimate grappling specialist now under Mark Lehman. So the fact that Melvin can handle him fairly easily, in my opinion, shows me a lot about what's going to happen in this fight. I like Joe Lauzon. He's a very, very exciting fighter. I think this is going to be a good fight. This, to me, could very much be fight of the night as well, but I got to go with Melvin. I just think, the bombs that he packs in his hand are just going to be too much, and he's just so fast to go along with that power, and I think Joe's going to have a lot of problems dealing with that.
Yeah, I think that reach is going to be an issue, but it's going to be hard for Joe Lauzon to avoid one of those vicious strikes from Melvin Guillard for 3 rounds. I agree with you. I think he's going to get the win there. That's going to do it for us. We're live outside of the Fan Expo in Houston, UFC 136 live on pay-per-view tomorrow evening. Navid Razi for MMA Weighin, John Morgan of MMAJunkie.com. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.